Okay, all right. So, yeah, as Sue said, it started in 2018 in August, and our inaugural planting day was National Tree Day in August. And this is a little fella and the family who came along. We had a really good, a very good take up on that day. It was something that the 25,000 Tree Project was sort of sprung on staff, really. It came out of nowhere. It wasn't much organising. It was sort of, there was a lot of unhappy residents with the development that had been happening across.
A lot of unhappy residents.
So this was in response to that. I think there was one of the mayor's mandates for his election. We also, across the Shire, we also saw a lot of removal of mature trees due to the poor health because they were just senescing and aging, storms, and also that nasty 1050 rule where not nasty for the people who are really in high risk fire areas, but a lot of people took advantage of that to remove these trees. And also, yeah, the recognition that aging street trees across the Shire were not being, there wasn't replanting program, there was no recruitment, so things were getting taken out, a lot of trees getting taken out and nothing getting put in. So the Smith and Smith report was done in 2017, and it showed that we were losing 12 to 15,000 trees a year. And with that in mind, if that continued, we would be looking at a very bare Hornsby, like we wouldn't, it looked pretty bleak. So the response was that there was a launch for a tree project, and a few teams in Hornsby were in council were involved. We were charged, our natural resource team was charged with doing the community planting and contractor plantings and also bush care. The parks team was involved in the street tree planting. And I'm really glad that we were involved in the community planting. That was our gig because there was a lot of prickly instances in the tree planting. People just not wanting the trees or not, wanting them not on their verge. So the components that were to reach the target was the production of the trees at Council's nursery. So I'm pretty sure most of you would be familiar with Hornsby Council's fabulous nursery, and Ross took up the challenge to grow trees, street trees, for the street tree planting, but also to bump up the numbers so we could get stuck into community planting. And it was really, that he did quite a bit of extension on the nursery and quite a bit of upgrade at the nursery. Like I said, there was also the planting events, community, contractor and bush care, and that was my responsibility, or main responsibility with the rest of the team. And one of the other components was to make sure we could supply free trees to residents for private property, because private property is where a lot of the trees were being removed from. And if we were able to get trees on private property, we knew that they would have a better chance of survival because people are wanting to plant them. So that was a big push for that. And the other component was promotion and media and education, which was kind of tricky in some ways, but we didn't actually take too much of in this program. We held back on too much education. We thought we'll just go, this project was instigated quickly, so we just thought, right, let's go in and see what we can get done. Like go for the low-hanging fruit, and when people actually buck up or they didn't want trees or something, maybe our next round will be a targeted education of trees, the value of trees. So, for the natural resource branch, like I said, we planted, the program was from August 18th, and it's sort of come up to June the 20th, like just finished, well not just finished, but it has, I just put it up to the June 21 date. We planted 5,800 trees over that time in community areas like bushland areas, bush care groups planted. We targeted for our areas, we targeted bushland fringes where we had a lot of weeds and that we had reasonably good bush to create buffers. And in parks and road reserves, we also partnered with national parks in a few spots, Moogamurra in particular, and Crossland. And we also targeted schools who wanted to put plants or who had areas that they could do planting in the school grounds. There was a total of 57 community planting events in that time, and it was kind of quite interesting that it was, I don't know if, like organising community events, community planting days are quite difficult because you actually have to get, you have to have the right site for the right people that are going to be planting. And also you need to make it worthwhile for people, like to put enough plants in, and sometimes if you have a general community planting, you can't control numbers and you don't know what, you know, if you've got enough resources. So I tried to target just groups in the beginning and try and get those groups, like in groups that put their hand up or contacted me, and which was really, ended up to be really, really good because there was lots of groups that wanted to be involved, and then it was a case of I would have kindergarten kids, and so I could do an appropriate planting. I'd have the numbers, or I could do a scout group, or I could do teenagers, or I could do church groups, and so we were able to accommodate those groups, and it actually worked really well. And then on top of that, there was times that we just had general community groups and we asked people to book in. So we were prepared with resources and sites. We encouraged bushcare groups to plant as well as much as possible in their area and on their sites, but also in the areas, any areas that they could think that needed some plants. We also had contractors planting, and that was generally when COVID hit. We didn't have the community plantings were postponed, and we got contractors to do the planting for us. So they managed to put in 4,000 trees. And one of the things that actually then blew me away was we gave 7,800 free trees to residents over that period, in all different forms, as far as at the nursery, but also we did a home delivery thing during COVID, and we're now progressed to a thing called Plants on the Run, which is where we take a ute loader full of plants and go out to different suburbs. So we tried to, accommodate. There's been a lot of challenges along the way. Probably looking at those components now, the community plantings, like I said, 57 planting days, all across the Shire. They went from Brooklyn to North Epping, and a whole range of volunteers. So we had lots of different clubs, corporates, church, multicultural groups, environmental groups, scouts, Girl Guides, TAFE, Rotary, Lion Club, National Parks, Moral Service Bowl, and youth groups. And most of those groups wanted to do a couple of plantings. So over the period of time they wanted to be involved, and also, yeah, like I said, schools were really super keen. When we did plantings in our reserves, some of the reserves we did target that we knew that we wanted to would benefit from the bush care group. We started to sort of contact some of the volunteers, and people seemed to be quite interested. And out of some of those plantings, we actually evolved 3 new bush care groups. So, which was really very successful. Like, it's a good thing. People have been getting connected with the bush and also being able to nurture our new trees and plants. So, and it was all kinds of weather. So people just, sometimes we planted in the rain if it was there, if it was only if it was really bad storm or really super hot that we would postpone. Some of the sites you might be familiar. This one down at Saltpan Reserve at Brooklyn. That's the site that was prepared, and it's now, there it is in July to 2020, and I went down the other day to take some photos, and it's doubled in size now. So that's, yeah, in 2 years, it's amazing. You know, we've had really good success. That site, each site has been prepared, you know, after a site assessment. And this particular site at Brooklyn, if you're familiar with it, it's along Brooklyn Road and behind the RFS there. And it was a typical council dumping yard. Like, everyone just chucked all their junk there, all the works people, and over years there was car bodies in there, and there was all sorts of nasty stuff. And anyway, we decided to cap it. So we've been capping large sections of it when we get some free capping material, like crushed sandstone, out of some of the building sites in Mount Colah and Asquith. I go up and ask for crushed sandstone, and they're more than happy to give it to us. So we've been capping these areas with what's called venom. We get a venom certificate, which is the virgin excavated natural material. So it's really super clean. It's a beautiful material for natives. It's just quite hard to dig in. And I think, Barry, you might be aware of that. You did some planting at Rose Park. So it's pretty damn rocky, but it's great for the plants. The other one at Crosslands Reserve was another planting that was, we took back a large area that was a national parks land, and in conjunction with Andrew Duffy, and we replanted a large portion of the area that was used to flood up there, and that is also worth having a look if you're down that way, because we've done very little to it, and a lot was planted, but a lot has actually just regenerated as well, suckering the heavy glaucas coming up. That's a fabulous site now. So, yeah, really worthwhile. And a couple more, one at Fagan Park, which was the National Tree Day in 2020, and Rose Park, which has been quite successful as well. Again, we used, at Rose Park, we used crushed sandstone, and that's really fabulous now. Looking good. Yeah, with the community planting, the groups like vary in size and in capacity and capability, and where they came from in community. So it's a very enlightening and a very inspiring event to do. Actually, it's always, I've always feel happy after I've done a planting. It's a little bit of organised chaos, and sometimes you have to go around and replant afterwards. But it's really good. It's people. There's a common goal for people there that want to do it, and it's always very satisfying, especially if it rains later on through the week. That's even better. So the contractors, like I said, the contractors planted roughly 4,000 trees while we were sort of in COVID, all through the time of the project, but that was ramped up when COVID hit, so we couldn't have any community events. And they also planted in areas that might have been a bit tricky for general community, like this one in particular is right beside the creek bank. There's other ones that were quite steep, so contractors did those little jobs. Private property, which was, really quite amazing. We opened up the nursery. We had 61 tree giveaway days at the nursery, and we offered residents a range of trees from small things like small trees, things like Angophora hispida, Leptospermum, Polygifolium, small trees up to Eucalyptus, like Eucalyptus saligna. So a lot of things in between. Most of the trees that were taken were small to medium, so which is understandable in people's houses. So, but that I always figured that's better than nothing. That's still a plus, because it's hard to get people to plant trees. So if that's what they're going to take, I think we encourage them at all costs. 1,922 households picked up trees, so which was pretty, really super impressive. And they came from all different people. There was no sort of older people, younger people. It was just a big mix of residents wanting trees. So, and actually that demand has actually increased. The last one I did just before lockdown at the nursery was, I think in early June, and that was the highest amount of trees we gave away, 350 trees on that day. So that was the highest. So the momentum, I think, is building, and I think it will continue. I think it's something that we should continue that for residents after this project finishes. So 7,800 is amazing. And these are some of the events. Most of the events were held at the nursery, but we took over trays of plants to Danga Island in January. We started up during COVID. We did a program called Nursery Express, where we had people log on and order plants online, and then we did because also we had staff who were needing jobs to do. We did a home delivery service for people, so we would do different areas, like go out to people would order plants and trees, and we would go out to different areas and do like a courier run and drop off trees. So that was very successful as well. And now it's evolved into another project called Plants on the Run, where because we've been unable to do our normal plant giveaway at the nursery over the last 2 years, Ross has had a lot of plants, and we needed to get them out into the community. We needed to get them kind of off the benches. And so we chose reserves in all across the Shire, and it was once a month on every Saturday we go out to a park, and we advertise the week before. So it's like a pop-up, a plant pop-up, and people just from the local neighbourhood try and make it really localised. So we just get people from those areas coming to make it easier for the residents as well. That's been very successful as well. Look, this sort of stuff, yeah, happens with a lot of people. It's a lot of trees that have been planted, but it's a lot of people that have been involved in the program, and the volunteers, especially big hand out to the volunteers at the nursery, have been just amazing. And just volunteers coming to plant as well. So we've had around about 5,000 volunteers be part of the program, and it's quite good to see people so connected, and maybe that's sort of something people came a bit more connected to their local environment when COVID hit, and more aware. So, you know, and maybe that's a good thing that's come out of COVID for our environment. The street tree was a little bit more prickly from what the parks guys have said, and a lot more complicated. Their letters went out to residents, and we got a very high rejection rate across the Shire. So they were able to plant 10,400 trees on verges, but the rejection rate was 39%, which is quite high. Speaking with other councils, rejection rates are usually 4%, something like that. So Hornsby was quite high. I kind of understand that in a way, because Hornsby has a lot of trees, and people are nervous. Just before this project was initiated, we had the big storms. We had quite large storms through Cherrybrook. So people were quite nervous, and there was a lot of tree removal applications at that time. So I think I think they're pretty nervous about putting any extra trees in. And some people just don't like leaves on the ground. They just don't want a tree. Our parks team put 1,700 trees in parks. So that was, that's been a bonus as well, to allow them to actually put more trees in, because there was a lot of trees in parks that were senescing, and now there's more recruitment. So they planted a total of 12,000 trees over that period. This is a bit of the breakdown where most of the trees were put in. And you can see that I was looking at this Cherrybrook, where we got like a huge rejection rate, but in actual fact, Cherrybrook's been given the most trees, been planted the most trees. And I think that they were able to put them in areas where there wasn't on actually residents' verges. It was like council land verges and in parks. So because Cherrybrook was identified as an area where there was it was lacking in canopy. So it was, a bit of a heat island there along this Waitara and Hornsby. So it's been good to get those in at Cherrybrook. Hornsby, another one that had a high take-up of trees. I think the biggest one for rejection was Beecroft, and that's, there was a lot of people at Beecroft didn't want trees. So it is quite a treed suburb anyway, so that may explain that. We developed a tracking to actually create an inventory, and also to create to track our work and be able to analyse the data as well. We had an app created in-house to track the trees that were planted, and this has been really good to give us actually data on how many street trees were planted, how many private property, how many trees went into private property, and how many were put into reserves. And it probably will be a good thing as an inventory, to start to work out as an inventory, that we can do a comparative. It's good benchmark data, at least, to see how many do survive into the future as well. It's online at that link if you wanted to go and have a look at it. And I mean, people could enter trees that they didn't plant with the general community, but I basically did a lot of data entry on that too. So I'm kind of aware that I'm pretty sure that most of it is accurate. It came from us, council. The challenges and successes of the program has been, I suppose, to be flexible and adaptable, and yeah, there's no one size fits all with dealing with community and dealing with a dynamic environment. So we had the storm, and then drought into 19, the bushfires into 20, and then COVID into 20. And then we recently had some floods and we had COVID again. So, yeah, it's been, through all that, it's a lot of things that was quite difficult to manoeuvre around. But having said that, there's a new generation of trees now out there in Hornsby. We had some tree loss with the adverse weather and vandalism and a little bit of grazing with wallabies and rabbits, but nothing too substantial. The successes really, I think, was the community engagement and support, which was pretty outstanding, I think, for Hornsby. It was really a very positive program, and I think there's quite a bit of momentum building for that, and for it to continue. Maybe not in the same ambitious target of 25,000 trees. That was, you know, mention that and it's your eyes roll back in your head and you think, you know, yeah, sure. But I sort of see it as even if 75% of those trees survive, we won't see it now for the next 5 years, but we will definitely have more trees in Hornsby. So we're in a much better place, I think, to at least maintain our canopy and maintain and enhance the character of Hornsby, try and reverse the canopy loss, increase community knowledge and stewardship, and also would be good to for Hornsby to have, you know, a bit more of a detailed education plan, a follow-up. We'll be creating more shade in areas of need and be able to manage our trees, these new trees, if we get up a database and tree inventory, manage risks better. And it's in line with what state government are wanting, you know, us to do, and also local government now. All local governments across New South Wales, a lot of them have got urban forest strategies. So there's that recognition now how important trees, canopies across shires and for livability. So yeah, I think I've talked myself silly now. Whoops, I'm going to get back, stop sharing. Okay.
Thank you very much, Donna. That was very interesting. I must say, I'm not a Hornsby Shire resident, but we could do with that in Coringa too. I think, because every day I hear chainsaws cutting down trees around where I live, and they're always big trees planted, you know, many years ago, and they're also remnant trees, you know, blackbucks and angophoras and turpentines, and I hear it every day.